Alhamdulillah wahdahu wassalatu wassalamu ala man la nabiyya ba'da amma ba'd. So we covered Quran and Sunnah. Quran and Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, first two main or primary sources where we get the rulings from. Now we talk about ijma, some of the bits about ijma today. Ijma or consensus. Consensus. This is the unanimous opinion, total agreement. And this is third proof, as we know about after Quran and Sunnah. And it is rational proof. Individual, when they make an opinion, this is called ijtihad. Ijtihad means to exert all your effort to try and work out how you could interpret the text, how to put them together, how to try and understand something which is not very clear, or clear but apparently in contradiction with another text. So this is individual reasoning of the imam or scholar or faqih. And when they all agree on some ruling, all of the imams, all of the jurists of the time, from their being jurists to their death, they all agree on certain points. Whichever point they agree on, that becomes a consensus, ijma. And ijma means to determine and to agree upon something. Here we mean agreeing. So unanimous agreement of the mujtahidun of Muslim community of any period following the death of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam on any matter. When they all agree on something, that becomes a binding. You remember we mentioned there are three things which are categorical. There's no doubt about them. Quran, Hadith Mutawatira, masterly transmitted Hadith, and ijma of ummah. These three things are absolute in their import. There's no shadow of doubt. So what is the evidence that ijma is something to be followed? Allah mentioned in Quran, وَمَن يُشَاقِقِ الرَّسُولَ مِن بَعْدِ مَا تَبَيَّنَ لَهُ الْهُدَى وَيَتَّبِعْ غَيْرَ سَبِيلِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ نُوَلِّهِ مَا تَوَلَّى وَنُصْلِهِ جَهَنَّمَ وَسَاءَتْ مَصِيرًا. Whoever acts hostile in a hostile fashion to the messenger after the guidance has become manifest to him, and he follows other than the way of believers, we will turn him to that to which he has turned and make him enter hellfire, and it is an evil resort. So following Allah and his messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but غَيْرَ سَبِيلِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ as well, the path other than the path of believers, all believer going in one way and I'm changing it. That's going against the consensus of the believers. So this is what Imam Shafi'i rahmatullah alayhi said. He was asked about the rationale or evidence for ijma in Quran. So he logged himself and he studied Quran cover to cover quite a few times. And finally, he managed to get this ayat. Allah opened his heart about, and he said, this is the ayah, which is the proof, categorical proof from Quran about the ijma being the evidence. Okay, Surah Nisa. And there are many hadiths. Inna Allah qad ajara ummati an tajtami'a ala dalalah. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has saved my ummah, protected my ummah, that they agree on misguidance. So my ummah collectively would never unite upon misguidance. They would have people who would reject it. So some would say one thing, but other would say, and then we would know that whichever one. But when they agree on something, that Allah has given them this protection that they would never agree on misguidance. لا تجتمع هذه الأمة على ضلالة. So Imam Hafiz ibn Hajar al-Asqalani said these are somewhat weak, but there's so many and they support each other and it becomes a binding. This is Sahih and Hasan. And another hadith, لا تجتمع أمتي على الضلال ويد الله على الجماعة ومن شذ في النار. So whoever my ummah would never agree on with guidance, and the hand, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's hand, Allah's support is upon, and with jama'ah, Allah support the collection, the ijma, the jama'ah, the collectiveness, gathering, like agreement. And whoever separates himself, he will be separated in the hellfire, like he will be thrown in hellfire. And then the hadith, لَيْسَ أَحَدٌ يُفَارِقُ الْجَمَاعَ شِبْرًا فَيَمُوتْ إِلَّا مَاتَ مِيتَةً جَاهِلِيَّةً. Someone who goes away from the jama'ah, leave the jama'ah, and not part of it, then they actually die on ignorance. مَنْ فَارَقَ الْجَمَاعَ شِبْرًا فَقَدْ خَلَعَ رِبْقَةَ الْإِسْلَامِ مِنْ عُنُقِهِ. Again, some scholars have taken these ahadith to mean similar thing, but they're not very categorical in its meaning, but they point to the idea that one should stay within the collectiveness. Do not go out of the collective opinions of Ummah. Do not leave the unanimous agreement of Ummah. So whoever done it, even a handspan away from the collective understanding of Sharia by scholars, he has removed the garland of Islam from his neck. He has actually taken it off. He's no more part of the Ummah. Okay. And then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, I asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I implored Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not to bring my ummah to the point of agreeing on dalala, and Allah granted me. And then he said, a group of my ummah shall continue to remain on the right path. So those are the imams, those are the pious people. We should always have the guidance with them. And whatever Muslims collectively see as good, then this is good in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what is the value of ijma? It plays a very crucial role in consolidating and unifying the ummah. It is part of the orthodoxy of Sharia. Imam Ibn Taymiyyah said, the hallmark of these deviant and innovative sects, those who are outside of Ahl-Sunnah wal Jama'ah, in their splitting from the book, the Sunnah and Ijma. Whoever though speaks with the book, Sunnah and Ijma, is from Ahl-Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Imam Ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullah mentioned this in Majmu' al-Fatawa. It ensures a correct interpretation of Quran, clear understanding, clear transmission. So everything is, done in a proper way when people agree. The consensus is always better than individual opinion. Individual can make mistake despite their sincerity, despite their knowledge. No one is foolproof. No one is, weakness proof. So, but when they all agree, it is the most robust way of knowing the fact, because it is inconceivable that everyone got it wrong. And even if everyone got it wrong, then that's the right way. Because how else would people know the truth? And it increases the authenticity and authority of certain rule. So something which was speculative, if one individual made a decision, that would be speculative, his opinion. But when they all agree, then it becomes a collective, infallible, and very definitive. So then it is a fantastic way of looking at the issue. Now there are categories of ijma. It is either ijma of Sahaba, ijma of people of Medina, as Imam Malik would propose, ijma of 4 imams, 4 madhabs, ijma of the category of a scholar, for example, Arabic language people, or the scholars of tafsir, muhaddithun, their ijma. So there could be different style that ijma is done in. So some ijma are explicit, very clear, categorical, they all agree. Some are sukuti, they are not very clear, they have not raised any dislike or disapproval to that opinion. So they stayed quiet, it's tacit approval. Okay? But that could be verbal and that could be actual, written, or it could be just they said it or they actioned it. They did some action to prove it. An explicit system ijma, this is a definitive proof. It is a binding when they all agree on something. And if someone violated it, they can actually come outside of the fold of Islam or definitely orthodoxy. There's no room for further ijtihad in this matter. It can be verbal or actual. For example, if they clear something, that becomes a binding. Okay, it's very, very strong. The verbal is much more stronger ijma, because then we know that that's all sorted. For example, it is haram for Jundi and Haida to touch Quran. This is by consensus of all the imams. So they would agree on this. So we cannot touch Quran if we are in, sexual defilement, either through hayd or nifas, or from being in the state of janaba, through sexual intercourse or ihtilam, and wet dream. Laughing out loud in prayer, it breaks the prayer, but not wudu. Wudu, Hanafis take it, but others don't. So they are the examples where everyone except, all the imams accept. Touching Quran is agreed upon. Whether you can read verbally is different upon. Okay, so that's not ijma on. There's certain people would say that it is okay to read, but Hanafi and majority wouldn't take that. They say it's not allowed to even say verbally. And action-wise, Mujtahidun, they actually showed that they affirmed that particular action. Or, like for example, Abu Bakr Siddiq was the first Khalifa. Everyone accepted him. Even if they didn't say it, it became the norm. The Ummah accepted him as Khalifa. Those who do not pay zakat, Sayyidina Umar, Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq, Uthman, Ali, they were together. All the Sahaba, they went out of their way to fight those people who were Muslim, but they stopped paying zakat after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away. So they went out. They didn't say that we agree on this, but they went out and they fought these people and then made them take the previous position of paying the zakat. They started doing it. Otherwise, they would be considered outside of the fold. And likewise, compiling the book, Quran, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't leave the Quran as a book form. He left everything written down in different parchments and pieces of papers and camel's shoulder blade, but not as a book form. But then Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq and Umar, during their time, Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq's time, Sayyidina Umar invited him to do that, and then he deliberated on it for a long time, and finally he realized that there's benefit in it, and it became a known, accepted principle that we can write it down. And they got Zayd ibn Sabit to come and compile it, who was one of the scribes of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They compiled it, and then Ummah agreed that compilation is the compilation of Quran. So there's certain tacit approvals. It is a presumption that if you did not raise your concern, then you must be in agreement. You might not have heard about it. There's a possibility that you didn't realize it, and you couldn't respond to it. You got delayed for whatever reason. So anyway, it creates a possibility that there is ijma, but not a must. So then there is a possibility of having a new ijtihad on this. So Maliki and Shafi scholars, fuqaha, they do not take it as a strong proof. Hanafis and Hanbalis take it as a strong proof with some conditions. There are a few conditions with that, which is beyond the scope of this discussion. And again, you do not even violate this unless there's a good reason for it and you've got new ijtihad done. Okay, so what some conditions that they put forward? They say it must fulfill 6 conditions. The mujtahid knows the issue under deliberation. It's not something unknown to them. So for example, they're talking about cloning, and the mujtahid is not versed in that. He hasn't gone through this stuff very well. He needs to know that. He must have enough time to investigate it. The issue is the ijtihadi issue, not anything. And the issue did come into existence prior to the madahib, not afterwards. Meaning that then there's no ijtihad, there perhaps is going to be individual opinion. And the tacit approval or the silence is not due to fear. The ruling authority is saying that you can't talk about that. And then silence is not considered a definitive sign of either agreement or disagreement. Rather, it should be taken as on the face value. Okay, so those are the conditions that some Imams would put. Inshallah, then we leave it there. And with that, we come to the conclusion of our lesson to today. Inshallah, let's see you again next week. Jazakallahu khaira. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.